Tonight, dangerous weather threatening millions from coast to coast. A powerful winter storm unleashing at least 9 tornadoes across the South. Buildings torn to shreds, cars tossed around like toys. And there is still a threat tonight. The same system triggering dust storms in Texas, now taking aim at the Northeast. New York City bracing for the first major snowfall of the season. Al Roker joins us live straight ahead. A bombshell report from the Department of Energy finding the COVID pandemic was likely started by a Chinese lab leak in Wuhan and not by natural transmission from animals to humans. We'll break down the new reporting. Visiting the crime scene, the surprise development in the Alex Murdaugh trial. The judge allowing the jury to travel to the Murdaugh family home to see the site of the double murders, what the defense wants those jurors to see. In the Americas, tampering with democracy, a sea of protesters flooding the streets of Mexico City. Why a new proposal from the Mexican president has these demonstrators outraged, and why some fear the proposal is an effort to obstruct fair and free elections. Plus, the shocking case out of Hong Kong. A popular model and influencer believed to have been murdered, her remains found in a refrigerator and in a cooking pot. What her ex-husband and former in-laws have now been charged with. And the dramatic video showing the moment a New Jersey home exploded with 6 firefighters inside. How they all miraculously made it out alive. Top story starts right now. And good evening. We begin Top Story tonight with the dangerous winter storm tearing across the country. Tens of millions in the path of this system that has already spawned tornadoes and dust storms and is now dropping inches of snow. Let's take a look at the power of this storm. We've had tornado watches and warnings popping up all throughout the day, but we wanted to show you this, a confirmed tornado touching down just outside of Champaign, Illinois. This morning is when it happened, and just one of at least 9 reported twisters over the last 24 hours. And it was a terrifying nighttime tornado that did all this damage in central Oklahoma, ripping off roofs, destroying homes, and sending cars flying. That system also bringing straight-line winds of up to 100 miles per hour to Texas, kicking up sand and dust. This was Plainview, Texas yesterday, looking more like the surface of Mars. Pretty incredible there. And the storm now barreling north, expected to blanket the upper Midwest and parts of New England in snow. New York City bracing for its first major accumulation of the season. We'll have full team coverage tonight. We've got Al Roker in the house to break it all down for us, including all the wild weather that's been happening. But first, let's get right to NBC's Morgan Chesky in hard-hit Norman, Oklahoma. Morgan, we can see all that damage there behind you, an entire neighborhood wiped off the map.
Yeah, Tom, just an absolutely terrifying ordeal. These powerful storms struck under cover of darkness. People heard tornado sirens, took shelter, and then the devastation came. This just a glimpse of what these powerful storms left behind, not just here in Norman, but all across the southern plains. And unfortunately, tonight, that threat for severe weather isn't over yet.
Tonight, Oklahoma facing a mangled mess. Homes shredded and cars tossed from terrifying tornadoes striking overnight.
There's possibly a tornado going over us right now.
The storm spawning 9 reported twisters, slamming the southern plains with devastating winds, drenching rain and hail.
Hello? Everybody okay? You in there?
The city of Norman, Oklahoma suffering a direct hit.
My house is destroyed. My property, as you can see, is destroyed.
Can you salvage anything?
I'm not sure.
But Dinah Korhummel worried less about her home than her barn full of beloved horses when the storm ripped the roof right off.
So as you walk in, you don't know what to expect.
I'm thinking every horse is dead. And all of a sudden, all the noses are coming out. And I'm going, oh, my God. It is heartbreaking, but I'm so glad that the horses are okay.
That same system lashing parts of New Mexico and Texas in a sandstorm, blowing up so much dust, NOAA spotted it on radar. Now, as the storm churns east, a new tornado threat. At least 4 reported twisters touching down in Illinois, as 42 million people face winter alerts from the Great Lakes to the Northeast. Tonight, New York City prepping for what could be their biggest snowfall all year. On the West Coast, where millions were battered by record snow and rain, another round is now soaking the Golden State. Outside Los Angeles, saturated hillsides giving way.
scariest part is the people that live up there, and just thinking about how much more rain could come.
Coast-to-coast extremes wreaking havoc as millions hunker down.
Absolutely wild images there. Morgan Chesky joins us again from Norman, Oklahoma, live tonight. So, Morgan, you see all this damage behind you. You see all the damage in your story. Talk to us about injuries.
Yeah, Tom, we heard from officials today. They confirmed 12 people in the Norman area were injured as a result of this storm, but they say none of those injuries are serious or life-threatening. Everyone expected to make a full recovery, and as of right now, there's been no reported loss of life as a result of this storm here in Oklahoma, Texas, or Kansas. Tom?
A little bit of good news there. Now, we know the storm is qualified as a derecho. Can you explain to our viewers why those storms are so dangerous?
Yeah, what makes this derecho so dangerous, Tom, is its size. This is a line of thunderstorms, far from just one or two, that really creates a squall line that can stretch more than 200 miles. And in this case, it really did, from Texas upwards to Kansas. And we had these powerful storms that, if they didn't bring a tornado like they did in this case, they were straight line winds, Tom, that in some cases were recorded topping 100 miles an hour. That's certainly more than enough to cause widespread damage. So even if people dodge tornadoes that are created as a result of these powerful thunderstorms, they still have devastating winds to contend with. And that's why so many people, too many people, are going to be picking up the pieces in the days ahead. Tom?
Yeah, we can see all the evidence of that power just behind you. Morgan Chesky leading us off tonight here on Top Story. For more on the devastating storms, I want to get right over to Al Roker, who joins us live in studio tonight. And Al, we were just talking about this. This storm is not done yet.
Absolutely not. We're paring back some of the winter weather advisories back around the Great Lakes. But as you can see, it's really focused now in the Northeast and on up into New England. 42 million people at risk for this winter weather into tomorrow. It starts later tonight here in the Northeast. You can see the snow now making its way into central New York, eastern Pennsylvania, an icy mix along the eastern Great Lakes, and then stronger storms emanating from this system. So we do still have a risk of severe weather. Much of that now in eastern Ohio and on into western Pennsylvania. That pushes through. Here's what we're looking for. The system moves through. Another double-barrel low-pressure system moves up into Canada. So through tomorrow, moderate snow for much of New England, a slick morning commute for Boston and Hartford. Here's what we're looking for as far as snow accumulations. Here in New York City, about 2 to 4 inches, but I think most of that is going to be on grassy surfaces and on car tops because the air right now is still fairly warm. But Albany, New York could see 4 to 8 inches, as well as Hartford. Boston, again, you could be looking at 2 to 4 inches, and Augusta maybe 4 to 6 inches, Tom.
Okay, Al Roker, with those snow totals, we will hopefully see what they're like tomorrow. Al, we appreciate all that. Turning now to our other big headline of the night, a new U.S. government report that the COVID pandemic originated from a Chinese lab. The Department of Energy saying it was an accidental leak. This new report conflicts with the previous intelligence that COVID was transmitted from animal to human, but several agencies are still divided on the cause. NBC's Kelly O'Donnell has more.
A new twist on the crucial 3-year-old mystery of COVID's origin. The Department of Energy, whose experts oversee national labs, has changed its assessment based on new intelligence, now saying it is likely the deadly virus stemmed from an accidental laboratory leak in China, according to 2 sources with direct knowledge. But that judgment comes with low confidence, meaning its credibility is questionable. This follows an FBI assessment over a year ago with moderate confidence that a Chinese lab was most likely the source of the pandemic.
There is not a consensus right now in the U.S. government about exactly how COVID started.
The most recent declassified report from 2021 shows the split among experts across 18 intelligence agencies. 4 of those intel groups assessed with low confidence the initial infection was most likely caused by natural exposure to an animal infected.
The FBI and DOE that are going more towards the potential of a lab leak. Nobody is saying this was on purpose. Let me be clear. No one is supposing that.
The development frustrates many conservatives who say they were vilified when former President Trump and others spoke up, backing the lab leak theory.
People like me, we were completely shut down, called conspiracy theorists, and had our reputations tacked and savaged.
Late today, Republican lawmakers sent letters demanding information on COVID origins and the Chinese Communist Party's role in obscuring the truth. And separately demand the Biden administration declassify all evidence related to a potential lab leak.
All right, Kelly O'Donnell joins us tonight from the White House. Kelly, early on in the Biden presidency, he tackled the origin question, right? Tasking intel agencies to give him more information about all of this. But he got to no conclusive answers, in part because China refuses to play ball.
There's a lot of frustration about that, Tom, because China would not allow independent lab inspectors in, and they've been opaque in many ways, and that has frustrated this process. But the president has asked for a whole-of-government approach across the 18 intelligence agencies and the key departments, and they still believe it's possible to get to answers, and the administration says that is critically important, not so much about going back and reliving the past, but trying to be better prepared for future pandemics. And after what we've all lived through the past 3 years, we know how great that risk really is.
And Kelly, speaking of China, the Chinese were not too happy about this recent report coming out.
They certainly weren't. The Chinese Foreign Ministry really pushed back hard on the U.S., saying that this report is a sign of politicizing the origins of COVID and really urged the U.S. to stop smearing China. Of course, that is not what the U.S. says is happening here. The U.S. says this is one thread in a part of the picture of trying to get to answers. But it's a sign, really, Tom, of the ongoing tension that always exists with China, but it is acute right now after the spy balloon and the questions about whether China might help Russia. It is a difficult period between U.S.-China relations, and this issue is right at the heart of it.
All right, Kelly O'Donnell, on that new report from the Energy Department. Kelly, we appreciate it. For more on the findings of this report and what it means for our understanding of COVID, let's bring in infectious disease physician Dr. Amish Adalja of Johns Hopkins University and former CIA officer and FBI special agent Tracy Walder. Thank you both for being here on Top Story tonight. Doctor, I'm going to start with you. As briefly as you can, how do we figure out where COVID started? How do these scientists and these intelligence experts figure that out? Because that seems to be incredibly complicated.
So there's basically two live hypotheses. Did this come from the wet market and an animal, or did it come from a laboratory accident? So what you do in each of those cases is, for example, if you're looking at the animals, you try to figure out what was the intermediate animal that housed COVID-19 before it jumped into humans. It went from bats to some unknown animal. You try to find that animal, look at the strain, see what's circulating in animals. If it's a laboratory accident, you look and see what types of viruses were the labs working with. How closely related were they to SARS-CoV-2? What types of experiments were they doing? What level of biosafety was practiced in those laboratories? Then you kind of figure all of that out, but it's very hard without transparency from China.
So you're saying without the help of China, will we ever get the real answer, if you will?
It's very difficult to see us getting a definitive answer without China being more transparent. And they've been not transparent from the very beginning of this pandemic.
Tracy, you know, some people may be seeing this report, they may be seeing Kelly O'Donnell's report, and they're going to say to themselves, the finding came from the Department of Energy, that they have intelligence and sources that led to this conclusion. I want to ask you about that. Who knew that the Department of Energy had these sources and they have intelligence agents, I guess? I'm not even sure if that's the right phrase. What does that mean? And also, it was labeled as low confidence. Can you explain that to our viewers, what that would mean?
Sure. Well, I'll start at the low confidence part first, and that really is part of the Intelligence Reform and Prevention Act of 2004. And it really came right out of September 11th. And it's basically a step-by-step process in which intelligence agencies, which DOE is one of them, goes through and really assesses the quality, the viability, the reliability of our underlying sources. And so when they say that they have low confidence, what they're saying is this either could have come from a new source, a human source, or even signals intelligence. This came from a new source, or this came from a source who has reported maybe spotty reporting in the past. This is not a true, assessed, reliable source. So that's what that part means. Also, a lot of intelligence agencies throughout the United States really do have their own sources because they're collecting different things. The Department of Energy has different wants and needs, really, than the CIA does, than the FBI does. And sometimes there's overlap, and sometimes there is source sharing between the agencies.
Okay, that explains that part. Doctor, you know, early on in the pandemic, the idea of the lab leak theory, it was shut down in many cases. It became incredibly political, especially on the right. But it's strange. And then it sort of transferred into the medical community and into the media as well, where if you even brought up the lab leak theory early on in the pandemic, you were almost censored in a way. And I wanted to ask you, why did that happen, especially with scientists? I would think as in the medical community, you'd want all options open to the table to figure out where this thing came from.
Well, I think what happened was the lab leak hypothesis kind of got bundled up with an idea that this was a biological weapon, and there's no evidence that this was a biological weapon. So people were treating those two separate issues as one.
As one and the same.
And that caused people to say lab leak is just a conspiracy theory, just like the biological weapon was. But lab leak also got something that, because the right started to talk about it.
Seize on it, yeah.
Yeah, they seized on it, and we live in a tribal culture, and then it became this tribe is saying that, so the other tribe has to say something different. And unfortunately, when Donald Trump started talking about it and using words like Kung Flu, it just really got people completely to reject the whole hypothesis when there actually was some concern that this could have been something that
But it's strange. Even doctors and scientists were being shut down when they brought up the idea of the lab leak theory, and they were being treated as conspiracy theorists as well. I'm confused why that sort of the politics leaked into the science or bled into the science community.
I mean, that's the whole story of COVID-19, where there's been no separation between the politics and the science. The entire pandemic response has been politicized from day one, so it's not surprising that this was as well. And I think it's unfortunate because there are important questions that need to be answered to prepare for the next infectious disease emergency. This isn't the last pandemic we'll face.
Tracy, on the intelligence front, you know, when President Biden came into the White House, he made this a priority. In August of 2021, he addressed this issue head on. He said, listen, I've given 90 days to all the intelligence agencies to give me all their findings to figure out what we know. They couldn't come to a conclusion there. We now have the FBI and the Department of Energy saying with some confidence they think the lab leak is possibly where COVID originated from. I spoke about this earlier with the doctor here. Do you think there's any chance we will get to the bottom of this if China never sort of complies with any investigation, if they're never transparent? Do we have, I guess, sources on the inside in China that would at some point possibly give us the information on the origin of this?
Well, obviously, I can't speak to the fact as to whether or not we have sources within China. That would be a classified matter. But, you know, I think that I agree that we are never going to get to the bottom of this without transparency. We need to be able to go in there and look at the labs. And the reality is this is a global issue, and this could become a national security issue. And the fact that all of the intelligence gathering agencies are not on the same page is actually problematic. You know, China is not known for being transparent. It's a very difficult country to spy on and to spy in because a lot of the relationships span back generations and decades, and it makes it very, very difficult to gather human intelligence within China. And my best guess as to why this information is labeled as low confidence is exactly because of that. It's very, very difficult to get people on the ground in China. It's one of the most difficult countries to spy in.
Doctor, China has come out blasting this report, saying it's politicized. They also point to the World Health Organization investigation that determined it was extremely unlikely COVID originated in a lab. We know that study was also not the best study ever conducted. They were there for 4 weeks. 2 of the weeks they had to be in quarantine, and they weren't allowed the raw data from China as well. Can we use China for anything when it comes to the origins of COVID? Can they be believed at all? Is there anything they can give us that is useful, or will it all be tampered with? Should it all be taken with a grain of salt? Should none of it be believed?
I think it's going to be very hard to trust anything that's coming from China because, as I've said, from the very beginning, they've obfuscated the origin, the original cases. We saw them actually lying about the number of people who have died just in recent weeks when they abandoned their COVID zero policy. So I don't think that we can necessarily assume that what we get from China is actually the truth. Maybe there will be a defector. Maybe we have people there that can tell us what's going on. But it's going to be very, very hard to get to the bottom of this without China being transparent. And I think they should be called to task for that.
Tracy, finally, the Energy Department, as I mentioned, joins the FBI in saying the virus spread possibly because of this lab mishap. What does this mean now for the understanding of the government's sort of response and work into COVID's origins? Will the other intel agencies come together and say, try to talk to the FBI, try to talk to the Department of Energy, compare notes, or will that really not happen in the intelligence community?
So look, I mean, it's part of what got us into, 9/11, right, is lack of communication between intelligence organizations. And we fixed that to a certain extent, but I don't know that we have necessarily fixed that lack of communication, those firewalls that get put up in relation to something like this. And they do need to come together, and they do need to be sharing sources, because like I said, we're not going to get information, full transparency out of China. And one of the best ways to do that is to compare the sources that all of these agencies have so that we can get a better picture as to where this actually originated from.
Tracy Walder, Dr. Adalja, we thank you for your time tonight here on Top Story. We want to take a turn now to the double murder trial of Alex Murdaugh in South Carolina. The defense resting after hearing from final witnesses today, but the judge also granting a request for jurors to visit the Murdaugh family estate where Paul and Maggie Murdaugh were shot. Katie Beck tonight with what the defense hopes they will see at the scene of the murders.
The Murdaugh trial jury will go to the crime scene. The judge granting an unusual motion for jurors to physically visit the dog kennel area on the sprawling 1,700-acre hunting property. The defense argues the visit will help them spatially understand where the bodies of Maggie and Paul Murdaugh were located and see the small space inside the feed room where Paul was killed.
If the defense wants a jury view, then the court will arrange a jury view.
Also Monday, a defense blood spatter expert saying it's unlikely the murders were done by a single shooter.
To me, there's structurally difficult for the same shooter to have two long arms and no practical reason for that to happen.
And after lunch, the final defense witness, Alex Murdaugh's younger brother, John Marvin.
It's the hardest thing I've ever been through in my life.
Giving emotional testimony about returning to the crime scene the day after the murders to clean up Paul's remains, including pieces of his skull.
And I can promise you, no mother or father or aunt or uncle should ever have to see and do what I did that day.
John Marvin also recounting how during a visit to assist SLED investigators, he was offered false information about case evidence.
But described the white T-shirt covered in blood, even went so far as to describe that Alex took the bottom of it and wiped his face with it.
The defense has officially rested their case. Prosecutors say they have 4 or 5 more witnesses to call in rebuttal before the case goes to closing arguments later this week. Tom?
Okay, Katie Beck for us. Katie, we appreciate it. Next tonight, conservative media mogul Rupert Murdoch acknowledging that hosts at Fox News endorsed false 2020 election fraud claims. The bombshell testimony revealed in unsealed court documents in the $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit against Fox News by Dominion Voting Systems. Murdoch saying that he was aware that some Fox News hosts were reporting, quote, the false notion of a stolen election, and that hosts including Jeanine Pirro, Lou Dobbs, and Sean Hannity did endorse the election was stolen. Let's bring in NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas. Danny, how significant is this testimony by Rupert Murdoch?
It's very significant, and it leads me to believe that in all likelihood, the Fox defendants' efforts to get this case thrown out will almost certainly fail. I mean, anytime a defendant moves for summary judgment, the odds are against that defendant. The burden is so high, and it's so difficult to deny a plaintiff their day in court. But with these additional admissions, given the legal test that is applied to determine whether this is fair reporting or something defamatory, this case will likely at least get to trial. Doesn't necessarily mean one side wins, but it survives for the plaintiff.
This is what Fox News is saying, and I want to get your reaction on the flip side of this. Let's put this on the screen for our viewers. It's kind of lengthy, but I'm going to read it to you. Dominion's lawsuit has always been more about what will generate headlines than what can withstand legal and factual scrutiny, as illustrated by them now being forced to slash their fanciful damages demand by more than $500 million after their own expert debunked its implausible claims. Their summary judgment motion took an extreme, unsupported view of defamation law that would prevent journalists from basic reporting, and their efforts to publicly smear Fox for covering and commenting on allegations by a sitting president of the United States should be recognized for what it is, a blatant violation of the First Amendment.
Number one, with that statement, the talking about damages, they may be right. I mean, reducing your damages demand may be appropriate, but that doesn't really talk about liability. And you can expect that the Fox defendants will pound the First Amendment. They'll say it over and over and over again. But the key is this. The test for fair reporting is not just, is it newsworthy? And if it is, we can say anything we want without regard to the truth or falsity. Instead, it is a more elaborate test. Number one, it looks at the reliability of the source, and second, whether or not the news person, the presenter, is objective in their reporting. If they're endorsing the view, then that's not objectivity. And if they're putting somebody on that's completely unreliable, then that may not be fair reporting, at least under the applicable legal tests.
So you have a very serious case here, defamation versus the First Amendment, high-profile plaintiff, I should say, in Fox News. $1.6 billion. Where do you think this case goes?
The case survives, and that is a very significant development because most defendants won't even think about settling until they get past the summary judgment phase. It's almost like their free bite at the apple. Hey, we have a shot at kicking this case out of court, so why would we even think about settling? Let's take our shot. We have sunk costs. We've already paid for the lawyers. We'll have summary judgment motions. If we win, hooray, we win. But if not, then we know we're going to trial. Then it gets real. Then we call our insurance carrier. Then maybe we come to the table and talk about settlement.
Speaking of insurance carrier, because you opened that door, I mean, are they insured up to a price of $1.6 billion? I know you don't know their inner workings, but I mean, that seems like a very big number.
These plaintiffs likely don't care. I'm certain that Fox News has a primary policy. They probably have an umbrella policy, in other words, for damages that go over that initial primary policy. But then, even if you get past that, Fox News itself, the Fox Corporation, has assets. It's not like it's somebody who has an insurance policy and then beyond that they have no assets, so it's not worth going after them. These plaintiffs likely don't even care if it exceeds any primary or excess policy because what's remaining is something that presumably Fox could pay out of its own pocket if it had to.
Okay. Danny Savalas, great to have you here tonight. We appreciate it, Danny. Okay, next tonight to East Palestine, Ohio, where the EPA allowed Norfolk Southern to resume the removal of waste from the toxic train derailment. Residents frustrated by what they call lack of information that they feel has left them powerless to protect their families. NBC's George Solis has more.
Tonight, emotions still running high in East Palestine, Ohio.
The most frustrating part is Norfolk Southern is making me question whether I'm a good parent.
3 weeks since the Norfolk Southern toxic train derailment, Sharice Munyon, mother of two, says she's feeling trapped between a sea of information and instinct.
I have a 10-year-old daughter and an 8-year-old son, and are they going to, in 10 years, be diagnosed with cancer that's from this?
These renewed fears come as truckloads of hazardous waste from the site are once again on the move. After the EPA temporarily paused shipments over the weekend, they're now being transported from East Palestine to EPA-vetted disposal sites in nearby cities.
The addition of these disposal locations gets us closer to having enough capacity to finish the cleanup.
Officials in Michigan and Texas irate over what they say was a surprise delivery of tons of contaminated waste from the derailment.
The outward effect of it looks like we're being sandbagged.
Ohio's governor announcing 5 truckloads of contaminated soil were returned to East Palestine. As the NTSB continues its investigation, Norfolk Southern says it continues to work on track removal at the site as well as soil excavation, while the CDC continues door-to-door survey efforts to check on residents. Has anyone been to your door?
Not one person.
And what does that tell you?
That they don't care.
George joins us tonight from East Palestine, Ohio again. George, you've been talking to so many families out there. What's the biggest need right now as we're weeks into this disaster?
Yeah, Tom, residents here are scared. They just want answers from officials about some of their concerns with respect to their health. They're saying they're hearing about short-term solutions. They want to know what's going to be done in the long term once the camera crews leave, once the officials leave. They want to know how their health will be insured for the next 5 to 10 years. And residents here are really just looking for some accountability, Tom.
And, George, on that accountability front, we know that Pete Buttigieg, the transportation secretary, is calling on the railroad companies to do more monitoring when it comes to these accidents.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. The secretary writing a letter to the CEOs of major railroad companies, including Norfolk Southern, asking them to join the close call reporting system, a system that he says is simply common sense to help improve railroad safety. The secretary asking for a response from these CEOs by the end of the week. Tom.
All right, George Solis for us. George, we thank you. Still ahead tonight, the major shift at the happiest place on earth. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, outside of Disney World, announcing a big change to the way the theme park operates. Also, why he's not attending CPAC this year. We'll explain. Plus, controversy grown at the University of Alabama, why some are calling for a star basketball player to be pulled off the court after he gave a gun to a teammate. And model murder, a popular influencer found dead in Hong Kong, why authorities think her ex-husband and former in-laws could be responsible. Top story just getting started on this Monday night. We're back now with a gruesome discovery in Hong Kong and a warning. Some of these details are very, very graphic. The body parts of a model and influencer found inside the kitchen of a home a week after she went missing. And now her ex-husband and her former in-laws are charged in connection to her death. NBC's Steve Romo has more. And again, we want to warn you, the details are graphic.
Tonight, a horrific end to the search for model and influencer Abby Choi. Some of her remains found in a refrigerator and in a cooking pot inside a home in Hong Kong rented by her former father-in-law.
About the head, okay, it's a skull, actually. It's no skin or any meat on it. So basically it's a skull with hair, okay. And as I said, unfortunately, there's a hole on the right side rear on the skull.
The social media star's Instagram showed a picture-perfect life to her more than 100,000 followers, with one glamorous photo shoot after another, including one posted just 2 days before she disappeared on February 21st. But police say behind the scenes, Choi had financial disputes involving millions of Hong Kong dollars with her ex-husband Alex Kwong and his family before she disappeared. And today, Kwong, his parents, and his brother arrested in connection to the grisly murder. Authorities say they also found her personal belongings inside that rented home, including a pink handbag, but are still looking for the rest of her remains.
We are still working on many clues. Once we have any clue, we will do a thorough search again to find the torso and other parts of the missing body.
Choi was a mother to 4 children, ages 3 to 10, including 2 she shared with Kwong. Her loved ones tonight now left grappling with the unimaginable.
All right, Stephen Romo joins us now here on set. So, Stephen, the ex-husband, the in-laws, all in court?
Yeah, they were all in court today. Both Alex Kwong, her ex-husband, his father and mother, and his brother as well. The mother was actually charged with a charge that's similar to obstruction of justice, but the 3 men were charged in her murder, and they are all expected back in court in the coming weeks. Just a horrible situation, especially for the children involved in this case. That's their grandparents and their relatives that they're dealing with this here.
Okay, Stephen, appreciate it. Next to the controversy at the University of Alabama surrounding their top NBA prospect. Investigators say the Crimson Tide star freshman returned a gun to a former teammate, but that gun was then used in a murder last month. The victim's parents are now speaking out. Here's NBC's Stephanie Gosk.
University of Alabama is having a huge season, led by star freshman Brandon Miller. But instead of celebrating, the school is facing increasing pressure to take Miller off the court. Investigators say in January, Miller brought a handgun to former teammate Darius Miles moments before it was used to murder Jamia Harris, a 23-year-old mother. The gun belonged to Miles, according to police. Brandon Miller's attorney says that he was asked to return the gun and that he never touched it, was not involved in its exchange to Mr. Davis in any way, and never knew that illegal activity involving the gun would occur. Miles was kicked off the team and is now charged with capital murder, along with another man, Michael Davis, who allegedly pulled the trigger. Miller has not been charged with a crime and has continued to play basketball.
Law enforcement must have been really convinced of Miller's lack of knowledge or intent to not charge him.
But Jamia Harris's parents say Miller shouldn't be allowed to play. In an interview with USA Today, Harris's mother called the school's decision unimaginable.
She has a 5-year-old son that's still at home waiting on his mom to come home.
Adding to the controversy, before Saturday's matchup against Arkansas, the top NBA prospect received a mock pat-down from a teammate. Alabama's coach says they've been doing that all year and that it doesn't have anything to do with the murder. March Madness is set to tip off in just over 2 weeks, and the University of Alabama could be the tournament's top seed.
Unless there are criminal charges and new revelations, they are going to stay the course. This is their best player. This is the highest scoring freshman in college basketball.
The University of Alabama says in a statement that Brandon Miller is not a suspect and he's considered a cooperative witness. Meanwhile, the family for Jamia Harris says that her murder never would have occurred if that gun hadn't gotten to the scene. As for the 2 defendants, they are waiting on the grand jury to be formally indicted, and they're being held without bail. Tom?
Okay, Stephanie, thank you for that. Coming up, surviving an explosion. The new video showing the moment a New Jersey home was blown off its foundation. You see it right there. But get this, 6 firefighters were inside at the time, plus thousands of protesters taking to the streets in Mexico. Why these demonstrators are speaking out against the president and standing up for democracy. We'll explain. That's next. All right, we are back now with Top Stories news feed, and we begin with the home explosion caught on camera in New Jersey. You have to see this. Body cam footage shows officers arriving at a burning home when it erupts into a fireball. This happened in Pompton Lakes, about 20 miles outside of Manhattan. Authorities say 6 volunteer firefighters were inside at the time of the blast, but luckily, no one was seriously hurt. No word on what caused that initial fire. An arrest warrant has been issued for the rapper Kodak Black. Authorities say the warrant was issued after Black, whose legal name is Bill Capri, did not appear for a drug test and then allegedly submitted a sample that tested positive for fentanyl days later. He's currently out on bail for an oxycodone trafficking charge. A transportation watchdog will be auditing Secretary Pete Buttigieg's use of government jets. The Transportation Department says Buttigieg made 18 flights on FAA flights. Buttigieg's office says in all but 1 trip it was less expensive to use those aircrafts than to fly commercially. The audit, which will also look into his predecessor, Elaine Chao, was requested by Republican Senator Marco Rubio. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has signed a bill stripping Disney of its special district control. DeSantis signing that bill at a firehouse just steps away from Disney World in a special session earlier this month. Florida lawmakers passed a bill to allow the governor to overhaul Disney's self-governing powers. A source also telling NBC News DeSantis will not be attending CPAC this week as he promotes a new book out tomorrow and attends GOP dinners in Texas and California. Okay, time now for the Americas, and we head to where hundreds of thousands of Mexicans have gathered over the weekend to protest new budget cuts proposed by the president. Cuts they say are aimed at limiting election oversight ahead of their 2024 elections. Valerie Castro has this one.
A chorus of tens of thousands of voices singing Mexico's national anthem, filling the capital's main public square known as El Zócalo.
Yo vengo porque quiero un país con reglas claras, con transparencia y con democracia, por supuesto.
The large crowds assembling throughout the day Sunday in protest of President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's proposed budget cuts to the country's independent electoral authority, essentially its election watchdog. The protesters wearing pink, the color symbolizing the INE, the National Electoral Institute, concerned the cuts will force a more than 80% staff reduction, impacting the INE's ability to ensure fair and free elections and diminish its authority. The institution has long been seen as a turning point in Mexico's political history. Established in the 90s, it marked the end of a more than 70-year-long period of one-party rule.
By diminishing the capacity of this commission to go in every geographical location to identify citizens and register them, it will definitely undermine as well their capacity to vote.
López Obrador already expecting legal challenges to the legislation he argues would cut wasteful spending, but protesters fear the move is an effort by the president to keep his political party in power.
Ya se aprobó en el Senado esta reforma.
López Obrador is not eligible for re-election in 2024 under the country's constitution, which only allows one 6-year term.
We know the president is not eligible for re-election after this term. Why is this something that he would want to implement?
This reform, instead of fostering the possibility to to renew and enforce a new opposition system, it does exactly the opposite effect, which is to consolidate the electoral process in a way that is favorable to one political party.
The calls to block this reform expanding globally, including demonstrations seen in Washington, D.C., London, Paris, and Madrid.
And the amount of people that we've seen and the number of cities that joined this protest this last weekend, it is mounting, and it's a reflection of the whole situation and the context that the country is living from previous social movements that have been protesting for the past 2 years.
All right, Valerie Castro joins us now in studio. So, Valerie, as you reported, the Congress has already approved this plan. So who can block this now?
Well, right now it's in the hands of the country's Supreme Court, and they will decide if any part of the reforms are unconstitutional. In response, the president said today the demonstrations only show it's the protesters who don't want democracy. He believes they want an oligarchy.
So explain to me, Latin America has had a serious problem with corruption in almost every single country, right? So why does the president AMLO want to take away the election watchdog powers, or at least take away their funding? I'm trying to understand this because this, you would think, would hurt democracy in Mexico.
So this president's popularity comes largely from the working class, and he hopes that by reducing the funding to that watchdog group, that will go back to the people. But there is still fear that without that independent authority, the country could revert back to that one-party rule, which really wasn't that long ago. Tom?
Okay, Valerie, thank you for that. Now to top stories, global watch and the migrant shipwreck disaster off the coast of southern Italy. At least 62 people are dead after a wooden boat crashed into rocky reefs and broke apart near Calabria. Officials say the boat was carrying as many as 200 migrants coming from Turkey. Rescuers recovered at least 80 survivors. Police say one man was taken into custody after those survivors said he was a human trafficker. A U.S. citizen has been killed in the West Bank amid that ongoing violence in the region. Authorities say a Palestinian shot and killed a driver near the city of Jericho. The U.S. ambassador to Israel confirming the victim had dual citizenship in the U.S. and Israel. Today's shooting comes after a bloody weekend in the West Bank that left at least 2 other Israelis and a Palestinian man dead. And in Tunisia, hundreds protesting racist and anti-migrant remarks made by the country's president. Demonstrators, you see them here, taking to the streets in the Tunisian capital of Tunis after the president claimed the migrants from sub-Saharan Africa are part of a plot to erase his country's identity. The president also announcing a crackdown on those migrants, which led to the arrest of more than 100 Africans and black Tunisians. And we are back now with a health alert making a lot of news tonight. It's about zero-calorie sweetener. According to a new study published in the Nature Medicine journal, a sugar replacement called erythritol significantly heightened the risk of blood clotting, strokes, heart attacks, and even death. The replacement is used in things like stevia, monk fruit, and some keto products. For more on this study, NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel joins Top Story tonight. Dr. Patel, thanks so much for being here. So the researchers behind this study, and I found this kind of interesting, they said the discovery of this connection between the sugar replacement and cardiovascular issues was actually accidental. Walk our viewers through how this happened.
Yeah, Tom, what researchers were trying to do were to really look at what's inside of the blood of many people who have had these major cardiac events or at high risk for them. So they weren't specifically looking for erythritol, which is that sugar substitute or a low-calorie sweetener that many of us see in other products and that we can see in natural foods as well. But they found it, and they found it at alarmingly high amounts. And when they dissected out people who had had it in high amounts in their diet, they found an even twofold higher risk for some of these major cardiac events.
Yeah, so talk to me about that, the risks of this sweetener. What did researchers find?
Right. So what they started with was just what they stumbled on. But then what they did is they went into the lab. They looked at human blood and tried to understand what effect this chemical, erythritol. And again, remember, most of us take the erythritol in naturally. Grapes and other substances have it. But in many of these sugar sweetener products like stevia, monk fruit, and which are in a lot of low carb and ketogenic foods, we can get that at thousands of times of higher levels than what we naturally would consume. And that's exactly what they tried to reproduce in the lab. When they did that, they found that your platelets, which are the parts in your blood that help form clots, and that can be a healthy way to recover from injury, actually were hyperstimulated and formed higher numbers of clots, which could lead to some of those events like stroke and heart attack. And so that also then raised another set of studies to proactively look at people who actually drank a high erythritol drink and to try to then look at the activity in their body for hours, even after they had a drink. And they found that there were incredibly high levels of this substance circulating in their blood even hours after taking it in. So it just calls to question, Tom, I think, how much is enough? And that's exactly what researchers are asking.
So talk about this, like how much enough is, right? Because I'm sure a lot of people watching this are going to be worried. Right. If you use maybe just one packet of this type of sweetener in your coffee in the morning, or if you have a couple of Diet Cokes throughout the day, any kind of diet soda, I should say, should you be worried?
Right. So I don't think anybody should be worried at this point, because what we're seeing here is what we call a correlation. We don't know if this in and of itself is causing these cardiac events, so we need further studies. But in the meantime, if you're like me and you're out there in the grocery store or you're reaching for that packet, which I do every morning for my coffee, rest assured that the high levels we're seeing with something that's equivalent, Tom, to a pint of ice cream that's made with this substance. So that's quite a bit. So a little bit is probably not something that you would have to reconsider. But this certainly could impact people who are on some of these ketogenic diets or who have been exclusively using this as a sugar substitute. So I just would recommend that everything back in moderation. If you're doing too much of anything, you should probably cut it back, including some of these substances, erythritol included.
Great advice. Dr. Kavita Patel, we thank you so much for joining Top Story tonight, and we thank you for watching Top Story. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. There is more news on the way.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.